Donald Trump woke up today between a rock and a hard place. The rock came in the form of surging inflation and gas prices, and the hard place is the fool First Lady Melania Trump made out of his acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, who brushed away the Jeffrey Epstein story as old news earlier this week. First, the crippling economic news. Inflation surged to its highest levels in the United States in 2 years because of the global energy crisis created by the war with Iran. March saw a record 25% jump in gas prices for U.S. consumers, hovering near $4 a gallon. If you wanted to go on a European vacation this summer, now there's this to worry about. Airports there are bracing for a jet fuel shortage if oil can't pass through the Strait of Hormuz. Over in Ireland, the Irish government had to call in the army today to quell protests over fuel shortages caused by the war with Iran. It is a full-scale global economic crisis that might actually be even worse than those headlines and worse than we think, because the prices of oil that we track don't fully capture the full scale of this disruption. And there's no sign of relief right now either, thanks to the fact that despite the 2-week truce, Iran is maintaining its chokehold on the Strait of Hormuz. Iran is using it as a geopolitical and economic advantage. On that, the New York Times writes this, quote, Iran is giving priority to a trickle of vessels from countries that either trade directly with it or are not viewed as hostile to the Iranian government. It's putting Donald Trump on the defensive. Trump wrote this, quote, there are reports that Iran is charging fees to tankers going through the Hormuz Strait. They better not be, and if they are, they better stop now, exclamation point. Susan Glasser writes in The New Yorker that it is a failure on multiple fronts in terms of Donald Trump's objectives. Quote, Iran has not only retained control of the strait through which 1/5 of the world's oil and gas supply flows, it now asserts the right to charge millions of dollars in tolls to ships that wish to pass, a new status quo sanctioned by Trump that will enrich and entrench the theocratic government he started out the war wanting to topple. With Trump's failures piling up, Vice President J.D. Vance is taking the reins. He's going to try to negotiate a high-stakes peace deal in Pakistan tomorrow. But MS Now reports that J.D. Vance enters Sunday's talks, quote, in a precarious position, hoping to negotiate a lasting end to a war in Iran that he never wanted. J.D. Vance has privately voiced opposition to the war for weeks to Donald Trump and top White House aides, even as the president has pursued an aggressive military campaign. That's according to 2 White House officials. Hanging in the balance of these high-stakes talks are the men and women of the United States military. Donald Trump again threatened to escalate with the use of military force if the talks are not successful. He told the New York Post in an interview earlier today, if talks aren't going well in the next 24 hours, quote, we have a reset going. We're loading up the ships with the best ammunition, the best weapons ever made, even at a higher level than what we used to do a complete decimation. Grammatical fix was me. Donald Trump trying to reach a peace deal with Iran while his political and economic troubles pile up at home is where we start today. Former CIA director and our senior national security and intelligence analyst, John Brennan, is here. Also joining us, Margaret Donovan. She served as a captain in the Army, serving in the 101st Airborne Division, and later in 5th Special Forces Group. She was captain in the JAG Corps and is the former assistant U.S. attorney for the District of Connecticut. She's now a visiting lecturer at Yale Law. Also joining us, staff writer for The Atlantic, covering national security, Nancy Youssef is here. Nancy, I'm going to start with you. Just bring me up to date or sort of add your sense of where things stand in terms of all the analysis we've seen over the last 48 hours about how the United States and the Trump administration end this phase of the war with Iran compared to where we were before it started.
So where we are now is that the Iranians are weaker militarily. They've taken hits to their drone capabilities, their ballistic missile capabilities, their leadership has taken hits, but they are not weaker strategically because they retain control of the Strait of Hormuz. That even though the United States destroyed much of Iran's navy, what they discovered is they didn't need a navy to hold on to the Strait of Hormuz. Just the threat of those remaining ballistic missiles and drones allowed them to retain control. And that has become their key leverage. And so these talks are starting where both sides are trying to achieve very different aims. The United States wants that strait open. It wants Iran to remove its nuclear weapons capability, vow to not keep developing its program. And the Iranians are seeking sanctions relief, some sort of new relationship in terms of how it can continue to manage the strait, the end of fighting in Lebanon, which puts the United States at crossroads with Israel, and the promise of no future strikes. And as you noted, the president saying that that could resume in a matter of days means that we're at a point now where it's not clear how both sides reach a point where there's an enduring cessation of hostilities, where both sides can feel that they have gained something, largely because Iran is entering these talks feeling that they have the upper hand.
Director Brennan, is there any way strategically, I like the way Nancy sort of separated out military accomplishments on our side that led to military damage inside Iran from strategic objectives. And one of the, I think, ways that Trump has proven to be a political Houdini is that he says 37 things, and then in the end, everyone's so confused. But it was never communicated to anyone, by anyone, that said anything publicly that the single objective was to do some damage to Iran's Navy. I mean, that wasn't anyone's reason. Donald Trump told people that help is on the way. That was speaking to protesters. Regime change is something that they've all talked about. The nuclear program is something that they've all talked about. Iran now has complete control of the Strait of Hormuz. It maintains its nuclear enrichment program. It's got tons of sanctions relief that I'm sure will quickly fund the rebuilding of the military program. I mean, is there any analysis strategically that we haven't exited weaker than we entered?
No, and I think everybody's confused because Donald Trump himself is confused, and it just shows the real ill-advised decision that he made as far as this war is concerned. Neither side at this point has a winning hand. Iran, though, I think has a spoiler hand at this point because now they have played a card that they didn't play before this conflict started, which is the Strait of Hormuz. And I think it's going to be up to now both sides in a classic negotiation to determine what exactly are they minimally willing to accept from the other side and what are they minimally willing to give to the other side. So for the United States, I think there is a real interest, despite Trump's rhetoric and bluster about military capabilities. I think we want this ceasefire to continue. We also want the Strait of Hormuz to be opened. We want some type of action as far as the nuclear enrichment program is concerned. Whether or not there's going to be some type of Iranian agreement to suspend nuclear enrichment for some period of time, whether they're going to allow there to be some securing of the highly enriched uranium, the one that's already at 60%. And also, I think the United States is going to want to have some type of assurance that some of these other issues that are left sort of unaddressed or unresolved are going to be able to be negotiated or discussed later on. The Iranians certainly, I think, want this ceasefire to continue, and they wanted some guarantee that it's not just going to be temporary. And that's where Lebanon comes into this equation. And unfortunately, Netanyahu has his own agenda. And so the real question is whether or not the United States and Trump is willing to tell Netanyahu what not to do. And that means ceasing this wanton bombing and this almost indiscriminate killing that's going on in Lebanon. But also, I think the Iranians are going to want some type of compensation for opening up the Strait of Hormuz. Mm-hmm. Now, we shouldn't allow the Iranians to be able to, have some type of toll system in international waters. That would be very bad precedent. But there could be some type of creative way to say, okay, there's going to be some sanctions relief as well as unfreezing of some assets as a way to compensate Iran for some of the destruction that has taken place, allow them to rebuild, not calling it a toll system, but the Iranians are going to need money, need some resources. So I can see that, again, both sides are going to have to figure out exactly whether or not, again, minimum requirements on both sides are going to be able goal to be met that will give enough to each side to declare that they won, even though we know that both sides, in fact, at this point, I think are losers.
It's just amazing that we are one way or another going to rebuild Iran at a time when Trump is saying at fundraisers there's no money for Medicare or childcare or any domestic spending. I want to show you something, Director Brennan, that Sue Gordon said on this program on Wednesday.
Those allies and partners, the ones who have already started rewiring and making contingency plans. And if you want two really good signals here, for Italy's president to deny us, when a minute ago she was kind of a bestie, and for Japan's prime minister, who are always very diplomatic and very careful in their criticism, to make the comment she has, the world has figured out that we are not who we were and they must make other plans. And while everyone will deal with us because we're rich and powerful and we have resources, it will be a transactional relationship that does not give us the strength that we have benefited from and from which the world has benefited, at least for the past 70-some years.
How do you assess the damage to America's standing in the world?
Profound and long-lasting. I just returned from Ireland last night. I was caught behind those protests in terms of fuel. And I must tell you, every person I spoke to in Ireland were just disgusted with what's going on right now in terms of what the United States is doing and the decision to go to war. And they, refer to Trump as a madman, a lunatic, or whatever. And they see just how needless and senseless this was. And so, again, our reputation, I think, across the board is in tatters now as a result of what Donald Trump is doing, which is just using our military capabilities in such a reckless way. And they really do blame the United States for all of the challenges that they're facing on the economic, political, strategic front. So, again, they say, what has happened to America?